presentation is going to be made up. It's based on the first or the second Florida's first skirmish baptism of fire, if you want to call it that took place on April the 5th. What I'm going to do is back up. First of all, I'm going to start on April the 4th. And this is going to be a time sequence of events that take place on April the 5th. And to viewers out there, when they're listening to this, you might think that it's more mostly me talking about the federal army. But when I went in and did all the research, yeah, there is a limited amount on the second Florida, but I did go into all the federal reports and hundreds of resources to put together this picture. And we will be talking about the second Florida. And at the conclusion of it, I'll read General Magruder's after action report about the second Florida. So we'll go to the very first slide. And we're going to start off with April the 4th. And on that day, the Federals start their move on Richmond at 6 a.m. in the morning. And at the same time, it started raining that day. Federal cavalry was doing the screening of the federal forces out in front of them as they moved to keep the Confederates cavalry away from them. General McClellan intends to bypass and cut off Yorktown while quickly moving on Richmond. See, General McClellan still doesn't know the terrain around Yorktown or the Warwick River defenses. Now, to the left of the screen on that blue line there, that is the route of the 3rd Corps under General Keyes. He has a part of another corps with him. I believe it's Summer's Corps, a division or so of that. But the 3rd Corps is going to advance along the James River Road from Newport News to the vicinity between Young's Mill and the Warwick Courthouse. And then they're going to bivouac up there for the night. The 4th Corps, which is on the right, under General Heinzelman, will advance on Yorktown using the Yorktown Road to the vicinity of Cockletown, which is today called Grafton. And they will bivouac there the first night. That route there will allow them to cut off Ship's Point, which will be very important to the Union in the weeks to come. Okay, next one. The following day, it's to give you an idea, on April 5th, it's still raining. And the federal forces depart the bivouac sites. Both columns are advancing north. Now, it's not on this map, but I'm just going to bring up here that General Keyes on the western column's objective is to move to a place called Halfway House, which is on the map up here above, way at the top. And what that will do when he gets there, it's on the Yorktown-Williamsburg Road, and it would cut off Yorktown from the rear. General Heinzelman is in the eastern column with the 4th Corps, and he will advance on Yorktown to pin down the Yorktown forces. In the lead of Heinzelman's 4th Corps is Brigadier General Martindale Brigade. Both commanders stating that they got ankle-deep mud, the supply and artillery units having a hard time keeping up with them. Confederate cavalry, about mid-morning, were withdrawn behind the Warwick defenses. Confederate forces are on stand-to, awaiting the approach of the Federals. Okay, now we'll move on to the next map. This map here I want to bring up. It's for those who are familiar with what we've been doing over the years, over the months. This is one of the official maps one of the maps out of the official Atlas of the Civil War. And all the maps in that are made by the Federals. This particular map right here, it might be hard to read the date, but it goes between April and the 1st of May. What I'd like for you to do is where all the little blue squiggly marks are on there is ignore those. I couldn't white them out or anything, but what we're going to do is we are going to zoom in on this map to the area that is going to be the focal point for the skirmish that the 2nd Florida is going to be involved with. Okay, now we'll move on to the next day. Now, first thing I want to bring up on this particular map before we get into it is up at the top on the red, we have to distinguish the difference in how we identify the redoubts. Just like a lot of the battles throughout the war, the Federals have one name for them and the Confederates have another. In all the official reports, the Confederates always refer to the two redoubts as Redoubt 4 and Redoubt 5. The Federals, in their reports, refer to them as redoubts red and white. They also, on this map, you'll see where it talks about Fort Magruder. The only thing I could really find out in all the writings was that the Federals at this time, they knew of a Fort Magruder from people who passed through the line and informed on them, on the Confederates. But I believe they're getting that redoubt confused with the actual Fort Magruder over by Williamsburg. So we just, as Confederates, we go by number 4 and number 5. Okay. Now, this particular slide right here, we're also looking at 10 a.m. in the morning. Brigadier General Martindale Brigade comes under artillery and picket fire at the Warwick and Yorktown Roads intersection. That's what the blue star is. Martindale reports contact with the enemy to the division commander. During this time, it's still raining. Now, typically at this time, I don't know, when I got all done with this, I just happened to realize that about everything happens that I'm running the timeline. I was about 2 hours apart. I believe that this is a part of between Martindale, in this particular case, reporting back and getting guidance from the division commander. And all of us who know about the brigades and divisions and stuff like it takes time to set them in motion and everything. On this particular map too, I had on there that little red line that denoted where the pickets were out in front. Okay, now we move on to around 10:30 in the morning. Federal Division Commander orders Martindale's brigade to deploy in line of battle west of Yorktown Road along Warwick Road. He has 2 batteries in support. Batteries not to get too far off the road because of all the mud. Brigadier General Morrell's brigade, in the reports, it's a little confusing. In his report, Morrell says he was in the lead, but everybody else, including division commander, says Martindale was in the lead. And I'm going with Martindale. But for this, Morrell's brigade was to deploy in line of battle east of Yorktown Road. Each one of these brigades had 20 Berdan sharpshooters attached to them. Martindale does a reconnaissance with a pair of binoculars, and he's looking out from the Warwick Road over towards the redoubts to get the lay of the land as best he can. And it is mentioned that he did see a peach orchard in there, or an orchard. The brigades are facing Yorktown parallel to the Yorktown Road. They're not facing north towards the Warwick line. Remember that they're moving on Yorktown. They don't really know what's off to their left there. We can assume that Martindale especially is going to see swampy land, and it's going to become more apparent as they get more involved throughout the day. But their main focus is up the Yorktown Road to the redoubts and the town itself. Okay. Now we're up to 2:30 in the afternoon. It's still raining. Sometimes it's off and on, but for the most part, everybody there is soaking wet. Around 2:30, Colonel Grove of the 22nd Massachusetts volunteers his regiment to advance towards the redoubts to observe their strength. He's allowed to take 3 companies As they move out, the Confederate pickets withdraw to the curtain, which is in military terms is actually a trench line between the two redoubts, number 4 and number 5. And I put in there the assumption that this is from all indications that we get that this would be Second Florida was involved in this, in having the pickets out there and skirmishers at this time. That would be doctrine for the forces, and you can question it, but you know, I try to throw in a little bit about military knowledge if the units, we do know at this time that the Second Florida is in the redoubts as a regiment, and they would be responsible having picket duty out front. Colonel Grove advances to within 500 yards of the redoubts. They take fire from the enemy. He has the 3 companies lay down behind a low ridge. For the next couple of hours, while exchanging fire, he hears a band playing Dixie and observes an enemy unit he believes is conducting dress parade. He also observes 6 to 8 large caliber cannons, but only one of them is firing. Now, I've had read in all my readings I've been doing to come up with this, there is mention that, and I believe it is the Massachusetts unit, that there's talk about 3 companies that on April the 5th, that they actually took one of the redoubts and held it for a little while. But nowhere in the official records or any of these after action reports is there any kind of a comment about that. But I believe if you go into the actual, this is sometimes where you have to be careful what you read on maybe Wikipedia or Google or something like this, because some of the information that's in there, I'm not real sure. You got to really dig deep to see how accurate it is. And I'm not saying one way or another. Sometimes you just got to be open-minded. Okay, now the next one we're going to be moving to, I don't have a slide for, but this takes place around 3:30 in the afternoon. General Keyes messages General McClellan that he is stopped in front of Lee's Mill Pond. The ground around there is marshy and swampy, and he can't find any other crossings on either side of the mill pond to get his forces across to keep, because he expected to be at halfway house by the end of the day, and that's not going to happen. General Heinzelman has been at this time sent also word to McClellan that he has engaged strong enemy forces in front of Yorktown. And during about this same time too is when it's been reported the largest exchange of artillery fire was reported for the day. Okay. 5:30 increment that we're on now on here, that's, just let you know, it's cloudy, there's rain and showers off and on that continuing throughout the day. Around this time, Colonel Grove and the companies of the 22nd Massachusetts return to the regiment's line. Firing slowly ceases as evening approaches. Men on both sides lay down on their arms. Some fires are allowed for cooking for those that still have rations in their possession, if the fires will burn in the rain. Okay, that gives the sequence. It's pretty short, pretty to the point in this of what went on. Now, at this time, what I want to do is, this is where, I think you can go to the next slide.
The next one.
Okay. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to read General Magruder's after action report. This is right out of the official records. I've condensed it down. His actual report for that day is 2-3 pages long. What I did is I just I cut and pasted in there where he's talking about the Second Florida. As reported last evening, the enemy were camped last night about 5 miles in advance of our lines. They advanced very leisurely this morning, evidently taking precautions for the safe advance of a large army. Their road leading to Yorktown was good, and they reached the front of redoubts 4 and 5 about 10 a.m. and commenced firing on our works with cannon a few minutes later. Colonel George T. Ward's brigade, defended these redoubts with coolness and gallantry, opening the action with slight skirmishing, then returning to the curtain wall which connects them. The enemy moved their batteries to about 1 mile from our lines and opened briskly, but soon fired slowly and had continued to do so, ceasing at intervals until 4:30 p.m. Their sharpshooters found a protected position which they have constantly occupied in a peach orchard about 600 yards in front of redoubt number 5. And having ascertained the range, they made it dangerous for our men to expose their persons. 3 men, none mortally, and 5 horses were wounded at this position. I guess Berdan's sharpshooters are pretty good at shooting horses. Hearing that a brisk engagement was going on at Yorktown and fearing that Colonel Ward's position would be stormed by overpowering numbers, I ordered up General Wilcox with 2 regiments to his support, and he came up with admirable promptness. Passing the dams between Lee's and Wynn's mill ponds, which were guarded by the 3 companies of the 19th Mississippi and 14th Alabama regiments, I found Colonel Winston commanding at Wynn's mill with 3 regiments, a small battalion, and 2 batteries well posted, and the men in fine spirits. As I was leaving, the enemy artillery opened, mostly with rifled pieces from a high ground, some 1,200 to 1,300 yards in front and left, and continued their practice until 5 p.m. Proceeding to the redoubts to the left of Yorktown, I found Ward's arrangements satisfactory. The enemy's firing was slow and they were not pressing forward. I therefore ordered one of Wilcox, Alabama regiments, which had advanced to near Wynn's mill, back to the head of Lee's mill pond. Okay, that gives us an overview of what happened with the 2nd Florida on April the 5th. At this time, just to go over a little bit more, real briefly and quickly, we still haven't heard from the Johnston's army. Wilcox was a part of Johnston's army that if you saw some of the emails that he sent down early, several days early, and more's going to show up. I've been trying very hard to find my note, but I can't. But somewhere in the next, it was either a couple of days ago or the next couple of days, President Davis sends a message to General Johnson, and in it, it specifically says in there that he is ordering General Johnston and his Army of the Northern Virginia to Yorktown. And that is the first time in any of my research that I've seen any communication to where Johnston Army was referred to as the Army of Northern Virginia. Always in the past, it was either the Army of the Potomac or the Department of North Virginia. Okay, that's all I have as far as the presentation. If anybody's got any questions or any input.
Steve, I got a couple of a question, a comment. I'm reading that Freeman's Lee right now, up to the today, right now, the 4th and the 5th, and Lee, who's only a consultant, he's got no command at this point.
Right.
But Davis lets Lee really orchestrate who's going to go where, even though he's got no command. But he still not sure it's going to be up the peninsula today. He thinks it might be at Norfolk, and he's still and now Johnston has seen that there are too many people in front of him right now. So I think that's why Davis called him back. But right now, even today, even though you had the skirmishing on April 4th and 5th, Lee's not sure where it's going to be at, even today, which I found pretty interesting.
Right. I think one thing that's going to happen, and Cindy kind of laughs at me because I got stacks of notes all over the place. I've got maps that I'm constantly changing because the Warwick line, Magruder's still Army of the Peninsula, and he's still in charge. But what he's done as my map develops is made a strong point out of Yorktown with the readouts. He's made a strong point out of Lee's mill. His headquarters there at Lee's farm. And as units come down, General Rains is still in charge. Magruder's still basically got the 2-division concept with McLaws and Rains, but he's got that open area between Lee's mill and Wynn's mill. And what he's doing is to keep unit cohesion. He keeps his commands. McLaws is down there around Lee's Mill, and Rains is up there at Yorktown area. Any new units that come either through Yorktown or across that wharf at Jamestown, he wants them all to go to Yorktown and let Rains handle it. And what's with Magruder's direction, when Rains tells him that he's got another regiment, Magruder is using those units, whether they come from Norfolk, because some Pryor was given a couple regiments and formed a brigade. Pryor wasn't with anybody, and a couple of other colonels. When these units come down there, what Magruder's doing is he's putting them between Lee's Mill and Wynn's Mill, which when you start seeing things coming down the road here in the next few days, more of the Army Northern Virginia is going to start showing up. Johnston doesn't. He's not going to be there for, I think, another 10 days. As you can see, since we retired from cooking, we have not retired from the organization in any means.
I love it, you guys. You guys are doing a great job.
Thank
You really are.
you.
It's very nice.
In about 3
Very
weeks,
much
we're going
appreciated.
to maybe the next Zoom meeting we do will be from Williamsburg.